Thank you. We are with Jonathan Stoneman. He's a trainer and consultant. He's from the United Kingdom. And I would like you to talk a little bit about the new competence that the professional of media must develop.
Well, the competence that they have to develop is, there is new stuff. In the old days, everything was segregated, you know, even who could hold a microphone, who could run a camera, who could... Now you must do everything. You must even be able to edit audio and video yourself, creatively well, technically well. But in a sense, everybody can do that. Teenagers can do stuff and put amazing videos on YouTube. The real crucial thing, the skills that journalists still have to have, are the old ones of finding a story, telling it well, and I mean by that telling it well and appropriately. So if it works for online, tell it online. If it works for radio only, tell it for radio. Don't try and spread it over every platform just because you have a story. So find it, tell it well, and the sort of the underlying journalistic skills of checking, spotting a story, being able to write a headline, being able to pull your audience to your story. So the best journalist will always find a story and tell it so well that you want to hear it, even though you didn't know that you wanted to. Even if it's a subject that doesn't interest you, the great journalist will tell the story so that everybody will hear it and want to go, oh, I didn't know that, now I really want to find out more.
Yeah, finally, a good journalist is a good storyteller.
Nowadays, that's the thing that should distinguish, should distinguish journalists from other people. There are plenty of people out there telling good stories, telling stories very well, but maybe they invented those stories, maybe they didn't check every aspect. So the journalist has all that, technical skills, storytelling skills, but has the fundamental journalistic ability to check, to know sources, to know how to check, where to check. And then, because in a sense, all good journalism could be a recipe for boredom, you know, impartial, objective, accurate. So you could say, yeah, very boring. Now you've got to make it interesting as well.
Yeah. And where the young people can learn these skills and put in action these skills and the competence and try and understand the importance of the responsibility.
Where? Well, I think they have it, you can go to all over the world. There are plenty of journalism schools for graduates, for undergraduates. People can learn on the job, you know, they can do student radio, student newspapers and so on, and learn through practically doing it. But what they have to build up is a kind of, I think people call it media literacy, meaning you've got to understand what's working. If you see somebody's report and it's fantastic and it makes you think, but then you go back and you find that they changed a few facts and everything. It's about being able to take apart other people's journalism and learn from it. So do your own and learn from it. Watch other people's, read other people's and learn from it. So it's about constantly learning, changing, you know, what you do, how you do it, understanding your audience. There's a lot to be thought about if you do it properly. Some people joke badly these days that journalism is a sausage factory. You know, once you've got the recipe, you just keep pushing out the same thing again and again and again. To me, that is a danger, and it's probably a very, very big sin to do that, because still it's all about finding stories and telling them really well. And that requires thought and experience and, if you like, a sort of joy in your work, an enjoyment of your work.
Yeah. Maybe this is could be the difference between this, not journalists, but people who work for an industry and people who work for a public service broadcaster, maybe?
It's one of the distinctions. It's, if you're working commercially, you could do everything just to win an audience, because you win an audience, then your advertisers have an audience. And you might cut corners, not necessarily, you might cut corners to win an audience. if you're in public service, you should have a really strong relationship with your audience. That's the key thing. And if you understand your audience, then you can make them, but by understanding them, you make them want to consume what you produce. And it's a relationship. It's almost, in some cases, a partnership with your audience. Yeah. If it works well, it's more intimate now than it's ever been. In the old days, in the 19th century, people had great audiences, but they never met them, and they would write about war from the Crimea or something, but they never met their audience, but they had a big readership back at home. But nowadays you can get emails, you can be chased by Twitter and so on, people can find out more about you. So you have to build up, even if you never meet physically with your audience, you've got a lot more data about what it is they like and don't like. And yet you have to remain true to your journalistic principles, not just please them, because pleasing people is relatively easy. Yeah. Pleasing them with the truth, with interesting stories, with true stories, is much harder.
Yeah, maybe this concept of active participation, it's a link with this another concept that you mentioned, media literacy. Not only media literacy for journalists, but public, for audience. The right to use, to access, to use, and to learn, and to use for communicate something. No, it's
yes, and also to understand how it's possible to be manipulated. So, for example, you could be, from a young age, if you were interested, you could read the same newspaper every day, one newspaper every day. You would, regardless of the quality of that paper, you would have a view of the world that was formed by that paper. If you then build onto that, listening to your favorite radio station and getting news from them, and watching your favorite TV, you need to start understanding who might manipulate you. How could you be manipulated? In the sense of, do some people exaggerate certain things? Do they have an agenda? Are they pro this or anti that? And are they forming your views? Are they telling you how to think? And if you start to understand how they might make you think a certain way, then that's really the beginnings of media literacy. And I think that is a very important subject. And I know it's something that, for example, the EU and the Council of Europe and others spend money on. But it's at this stage, it's if you like, a cottage industry. It's very small compared to the millions of people out there who are in that position of reading the same paper every day and not realizing how they can be pushed to believe one thing or another.
Yeah. Do you think the media industry could act more responsibly in face to this, to afford this media literacy in their audience?
I'm not sure how they could do it. I think it's a separate thing. I think because very few media producers, if you like, set out to manipulate the audience. They too have their own views, they have their own agenda, and they quietly, accidentally bring people to their point of view. I think there has to be, maybe it's something for schools, maybe it should be part of a school agenda just to spend, at a certain age, maybe, I don't know, 15, 16 years old, when people really ought to start finding more out about the world, just to stop and say, well, look, how does this newspaper lead us to believe this? How does that newspaper or television broadcast do that? Start comparing. I mean, when you start to read the same story in different newspapers, and of course now you can do it on the internet so much more quickly, when you start to compare them, then you start to spot agendas and you start to see little distortions. Yeah. So I think it's the responsibility probably of schools and the education system to just put in a little bit of media literacy here or there. And maybe some of those people will then want to become journalists for different reasons.
Yeah, maybe it's a responsibility that different sectors must share, no? Education, formal education, journalism as a career, media industry and government. No?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome.